The novel Dracula has been adapted for screens of one size or another dozens of times, and that's not counting the hundreds of times the character has appeared in other stories. Yet few of these appearances are accurate to the source. Why? Yeah, filmmakers want to do their own thing, make it their own, but that doesn't cover it. Some of it is the novel. It creates special challenges for adaptation, particularly in modern times. Oh, and spoilers for Dracula. This is not a review of the book, nor am I going to rattle off a synopsis. You don't need me for that. Wikipedia has a perfectly good one. I'm just looking at the issue of adaptation. Okay, some of the problems are ones that pop up with many works, starting with the book being long. My copy is 450 pages, too long to be covered in a 2-hour movie or a 2-part TV presentation. That means chopping, and while there's some easy cuts, to get it down to movie length, you have to slice out some important items. And that length includes more characters than are easy to deal with in a film, at least to develop properly, and even for clarity. Few adaptations have kept Lucy's mother or Jonathan's boss, but they matter in the book. Quincy, Arthur, even Renfield often end up getting the axe just for space. And worse than characters, the book has a lot of locations that need to be distinguished from each other. And if you aren't up on your English maps, probably can't be. A book can spell it out much clearer, and having just reread the book, I still just shrugged and thought, okay, there's someplace else now. If you put all those places into your film, how do you make it clear where they are? And if you don't, well, the traveling is a major portion of the novel. A less usual problem is the structure of the book. It's an epistolary novel, made up mostly of diary entries and letters, with a few newspaper clippings, telegrams, etc. So no omniscient narrator, nor single narrator, but rather we're in the heads of multiple people, none of whom know all of what's happening, so pieces of the story may not be directly referenced, just inferred. This is a minor issue, mainly confusing screenwriters because it's not common. Except, the narration isn't evenly split. There's virtually nothing from Quincy, next to nothing from Arthur, and little from Van Helsing, and of course, nothing at all from Dracula or his brides. Most of the book is split between the points of view of Jonathan, Mina, and Seward. It's those three, and here we're running into the real problems with adapting Dracula for a modern mainstream audience. You don't see a lot of posts proclaiming, "I'm really looking forward to that Jonathan Harker movie," and I don't recall a film titled Dr. Seward. Anyone wanting to watch a film called Dracula, or some variation on the title, is looking for Dracula, but he's barely in the book, and we never follow him. Out of 25 chapters, he only appears significantly in 3, chapters 2 through 4. And he's not the main focus of those. It's Jonathan running around the castle. Dracula is in a little of chapter 1 as the coach driver, and he's in the background of chapter 6, the Voyage of the Demeter. And then he almost falls out of the book. For the other 20 chapters, he's around for roughly a page total. 1 page out of 400. He's seen from a distance, vaguely, a couple times, and as a bat or a wolf, for a moment. The crew of Light try to ambush him once, but he immediately leaps out of the window and is gone. And later, Van Helsing and company burst in to find him force-feeding Mina, and he leaves right away. Then his body appears, very briefly, in the climax, if we call it a climax, but he doesn't move and just crumbles to dust. There just isn't much Dracula in Dracula. To keep an audience happy, filmmakers have to find a way to insert more of the Count into his movie, and that's hard to do without changing the nature of him. So they do. And before returning to character, let me expand on the anticlimactic climax. The crew of Light get the drop on the locals accompanying the wagon, climb up, open the box of dirt, and kill Dracula, all in a few paragraphs. There's some arguments that it works in a book, but there's no argument for a movie. It doesn't. You want an exciting and satisfying conclusion that goes out big, and that's not going to happen with a direct conversion from the novel. Audiences expect a confrontation between the heroes and Dracula, and there isn't one in the book. Returning to character, it's not just that Jonathan is boring, and Mina, and Seward, or even that they aren't Dracula, but it's also what those point of view characters, and the others, represent. Modern audiences, particularly American audiences, like rebellious heroes, ones with a bit of rogue in them, ones who are sticking it to the man. But Jonathan, Mina, Seward, as well as Arthur, and even Quincy, are the man. They are the 1%, both literally and figuratively. They are upper-class, conservative, proper gatekeepers who look down on the rabble and want to keep out the foreigners. Jonathan and Mina are the least well-off of the group, and he's a lawyer. and halfway through the book, he inherits the law firm. They bribe or use their high status to accomplish most of their goals. So much bribery in the book. Mina even comments that their superpower is money, particularly Arthur's. And keeping in mind that a major theme of the book is to keep out the other, anything different or new, and you can see why adapters want to adjust the characters a bit. Finally, there's an issue not in the book, but in our culture. Everybody knows the story, at least in part. In 1931, you could still assume that Dracula would be new to some of the audience, but as the years passed, that's shifted to the point where it's all old hat. It's tropes and cliches. So how do you adapt it? How do you get past those problems? It's useful to look at the plays, since a play is a good midpoint between page and screen, and I don't mean the play Stoker read for friends to keep a copyright, but the 1924 Hamilton Dean British production and the 1927 Broadway rewrite of Dean's play by American John L. Balderston. How do they deal with the adaptation issues? In ways that will be very familiar to anyone watching the movies. As far as the themes and characters representing empire and the elite, they don't. But then it was the 1920s and everyone wanted to keep out foreigners. For the locations, well, these are stage plays, so they overcorrected compared to what a film can do. They knocked it down to the sanitarium, the Harker residence next door, and Carfax Abbey, also next door. So no trip to Transylvania at the beginning or end. Dracula's already a neighbor, and the climax is in the Abbey. That certainly simplifies things for audience comprehension a little too much. And we've lost a whole lot of book accuracy. The Dean play reduces the characters by dropping the mother, no surprise, the boss and the brides, but also Lucy, who exists but dies before the curtain goes up. I find cutting Lucy but keeping Arthur, and Quincy, who's no longer a suitor, rather odd. The Balderston rewrite takes care of that oddity by keeping Lucy dead before we start and eliminating Arthur and Quincy, while aging up Dr. Seward to be Mina's father, and just for confusion, swapping Lucy and Mina's names. Once again, I find this solution a bit severe, and I can't think of a single adaptation that takes it this far. Lucy, at least, is normally a major character. So yes, they took care of the problems of length, location, and numerous characters by chopping away much of the novel. It's a solution. But there's one more problem the play deals with, the lack of Dracula, made worse by the elimination of the scenes in his castle. So what the plays did is make Dracula suave, sophisticated, able to mix with society, so he can drop by for visits, something book Dracula could never do. It works, giving Dracula multiple new scenes, and film adaptations often go this route. Alright, so those are the issues, and the ways the plays have dealt with them. Now on to the films. So come back for, or just proceed into, my reviews of adaptations of Dracula, which will be easier to do if you like and subscribe.